What's happening, fantasy football fanatics? Ryan Thomas here once again for another awesome episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. And this one is very, very fun for me to dive into tonight on the show. This is my 2022 Dynasty Football Draft Recap. Those of you that are in the league especially will find this episode interesting, and those of you that are not in the league will find this episode interesting due in large part to the fact that this show is all about helping people with their fantasy lineups, right? That's what we're inching closer and closer to NFL football season. I want to be able to be the guy to help you make your team better as well. I want to be the guy to tell you who to draft, why you should draft those players. I got lots of fantasy football top 10 positional rankings coming out over the course of the next few days. So stay tuned for that. I did the top 10 fantasy quarterback show already. Spoiler alert, this guy right here, ranked number one on the list, of course, but got the top 10 fantasy running backs, top 10 fantasy wide receivers. And in this show, I'm going to show the differences between Dynasty football and regular redraft keeper leagues. What are some of the differences and what are some of the players that you should target all across any version of a fantasy football league, whether it's a redraft, whether it's a keeper, whether it's a dynasty. Who should you target? Who should you go after? So with that, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, the show is 6 years old. The Dynasty League is 1 year old. One season we've had in that league. I had by far the best record. I had by far the most points. I had by far the best team. But I came up short in the championship, and it's safe to say I don't want that to happen again. So, coming up short in the championship round against Jake Reed. Got to acknowledge the champ as he is. Currently heading into this season, Reckless Reed, Jake Reed, the champ right now. And going into this Dynasty draft, I had the 9th pick, being that it's a 10-team Dynasty league. I didn't know what direction I was going to go in. I wanted to go running back. Ultimately, a mistake was made with my pick in taking Treylon Burks. I'm not happy with the pick already. I like Burks, but I didn't plan on taking him in the first round, nor did I want to, but I did, and I can't look back. It is what it is. But I have to discuss what took place, what shook up the TTSP Dynasty Football League prior and after the Dynasty Football League draft was over. Prior to the draft and after the draft. Cody White of the slowest buffalo in the herd with another league mate of ours, Bryce Vandermast of slowest buffalo in the herd. They pull off their own trade after the draft. But before the draft, Cody White and Shane Courtney shook things up. They shake things up, shake. I'll just say they shake things up for this season. Because Cody White and Shane Courtney, F1 McLaurin, as well as Cody White's team, PF Cobanger, they make a big trade where Cody White says, I got Derrick Henry. He's one of the best running backs in the league, but he has had his fair share of injuries, most recently his last season. Trades Derrick Henry for not one, but 2 first-round draft choices. Now, the interesting part about this trade is that Cody White mortgaged a great player, Derrick Henry, no doubt about it, for 2 first-round draft choices. But one of those first-round draft choices was actually my first-round draft choice, which I sent to Shane Courtney in a previous trade for none other than Antonio Gibson. So Cody acquires the first overall draft pick in this year's draft by making this trade, which allows Cody White to have the first overall selection as well as the second overall selection in the 2022 Thomas Take Sports Podcast Dynasty Football Draft. And with those two picks, Cody selected running back Breece Hall of the New York Jets and wide receiver Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. That's who I would have selected if I was picking first or second, in Cody's case picking first and second, as Cody was able to post that trade. As well, in the 2023 fantasy draft, Cody White will have not one first-round pick, but two first-round picks. That second first-round pick, where that pick lands, depends on where I finish. And that first-round pick that he originally had depends on where he finishes, of course. A lot of moving parts to that trade. And you go back to the whole logic of dynasty football versus regular fantasy football, whether it's a redraft or a keeper league. Those leagues you're playing for the immediate future. Dynasty league, you're playing for the simple fact that you want to make your team great for the long haul. You want to bring in as many young players as possible. The thought process is very, very different. So Cody's able to do that. He's able to get a young running back. He's able to get a young wideout. In my opinion, those are the two best players in dynasty football for any dynasty football draft this season. And with that being the case, I think Cody's team is being built towards something, maybe not for the now, but for the future. And with that being the case, I will go as far as to say that Cody White pulled a Brandon Beane-esque sleeper fantasy football, dynasty football draft where we had another trade very shortly after the draft was over that featured Cody White getting Derek Carr and Darrell Henderson Jr. for Baker Mayfield and Travis Etienne Jr. Now, I think Bryce Vandermast got the better end of that trade due to Travis Etienne being a better back, in my opinion, than Darrell Henderson. But if Cody wanted the better quarterback, he definitely got the better quarterback out of the two between Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield. This season, I think Derek Carr could have quite possibly his career year. With Devontae Adams, with Josh McDaniels, the Raiders should be much, much better. They should be a true contender in the AFC. And I think Cody did a really good job getting himself a better quarterback, getting younger at running back, getting younger at receiver, and moving on from Derrick Henry. So trading away Derrick Henry, getting 2 first-round picks, acquiring Breece Hall with that in that trade, I guess you could say, as well as Derek Carr. That's 4 players, and it will be 5 players come next season. It's a lot of talent, a lot of moving parts, really only for Baker Mayfield, Travis Etienne, and Derrick Henry. He's getting already a return on that. So this is where I go into the draft itself of this year's draft. And this year's draft was very interesting for a lot of reasons, because I truly feel that a few teams got a lot better over the course of just one offseason. A few moves were made that allowed teams to get even better than what they were last year. And it's moves, meaning not moves by the draft, by the fantasy aspect, by that fantasy team, but literally the real life circumstances that led to players being put on better teams. Josh Rest takes Kenneth Walker III. My buddy Samuel White, he takes James Cook. With the rumors of Zach Moss potentially, rumors circulating that Zach Moss could be traded, that James Cook pick at 4th overall looks pretty good. Johnny Goldsmith takes Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints. Bryce Vandermast takes George Pickens, who has had himself a very impressive preseason. Nadif Taylor takes Jamison Williams, the wide receiver of the Detroit Lions. Kari Demos takes Sky Moore, wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs. I take Treylon Burks, and Jake Reed takes Dameon Pierce, the pick that I actually wanted, But I went with Burks, and I had hoped that Pierce would be there by my second pick. He wasn't. Reed takes Pierce, Christian Watson, a receiver rookie for the Green Bay Packers. And I go with a guy that I truly feel is going to be one of the better tight ends in the NFL in the next 3-4 years in Trey McBride. That was a pick that most of us didn't feel, most of us, I would say, most of the people within the league didn't think that that would be, they didn't think that that would be my pick there. And they should have. They very well should have. I thought Trey McBride would have been picked in the first round based on how good he can be as a tight end in this league. Brian Robinson was picked by Kyrie Demos, and shortly after that, the news broke that Brian Robinson was shot multiple times in a carjacking incident. And truthfully, I hope he's okay. I really do. Kenny Pickett, picked by Nadif Taylor. Nadif's got 3 young quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Tua, and Kenny Pickett. Wilson, the wide receiver of the New York Jets, selected by Bryce. Johnny Goldsmith gets Dobbs from the Green Bay Packers, another Packers rookie. And then Samuel goes running back once again with Isaiah Spiller. So Samuel goes running back twice, which, if you look at his team, which I will show it to you, you would see that he has a need at running back. He does have Devin Singletary. He does have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Those aren't true RB1s. They're RB1s on their teams, but maybe they're not RB1s for fantasy purposes. And Samuel went in that direction. Power to him for that. Jameis Winston was the first and only player selected in this draft that is an NFL player already. He was the first veteran that was selected by Josh Rest as his second quarterback. Dotson of the Washington Commanders, he is selected there by Cody in what was Cody's third pick of this draft, going with Breece Hall, Drake London, and then Dotson. And then Pierce, the wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts, goes. Zaire White of the Las Vegas Raiders. Desmond Ridder, quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. A lot of awesome praise is being thrown his way based on what we've seen from him in camp and what we've seen from him in the preseason thus far. Raheem White, the running back for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Dulcich, the tight end for the Denver Broncos. Trent Allgeier, who's in a timeshare with the other 2 backs there in Atlanta. Malik Willis, the fourth quarterback selected in the 2022 Dynasty Football Draft. Pacheco, running back for KC, likely the tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. And then I go Khalil Shakir with my third draft choice. Truthfully, highlighting Khalil Shakir as my third draft choice in this 2022 Dynasty Football Draft recap, I think potentially, I have what will end up being the number 1 and number 2 wideout on the Buffalo Bills roster, and that is Gabe Davis and Khalil Shakir. I think Khalil Shakir could be their number 2. Gabe Davis could eventually be their number 1, and that is post the Stephon Diggs era, so that's not for another, 3-4 years. Just saying, we're talking Dynasty here. We're talking future here on the show. Kenneth Gainwell, the last pick of the Dynasty draft. So, plenty of running backs were selected. Plenty of receivers were selected. 3 tight ends were selected. 4 quarterbacks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 receivers. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 running backs. So it was a mixture. I mean, obviously, quarterback was the least selected position in this draft because we already have our quarterbacks. I got Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, recently acquired Carson Wentz and Mitch Trubisky. Now, this league does have a quote-unquote three-quarterback rule, but with Dynasty, things are a little bit different in terms of Mitch Trubisky is not listed as the starter just yet of the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's presumed that he will be. And once he is listed as such, I have something in the works for him that I think will help the team that needs him more than me. So you fill in the blanks there. What am I doing with Mitch Trubisky? But Cody White most definitely stole the show of this Dynasty football draft. He took a look at his team and said, am I really going to win as much with Derrick Henry or without him? And he said, you know what, I might do just as well, if not better, without him, given the players that I'm bringing in. So, a lot of moving parts here. And there's been a ton of moves made in this league thus far. And I see that continuing. And I enjoy playing with these guys. Bryce Vandermast, Samuel White, Shane Courtney, Nadif Taylor, Josh Rest, Kyrie Demos, Jake Reed, Johnny Goldsmith, and Cody White. A lot of these guys are guys that I met through the sports media landscape. Kyrie Demos being one of them. Josh Rest being another. As well as Bryce Vandermast. Cody White was a co-worker of mine, and now he has his own page with Bryce Vandermast, the slowest buffalo in the herd. And Nadif Taylor has his own betting page for you guys to check out. So, awesome stuff. I think when I look at this league and when I look at where I'm projected, I mean, I'll show you guys my team. Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Antonio Gibson, Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, T. Higgins, Travis Kelce, Adam Thielen, who I am currently shopping for a running back. Want to put that out there, everybody. Tyler Bass, Denver's defense starting only this week against Seattle. But I have Wentz, Trubisky, Hines, James Robinson, hoping for a comeback from him. Michael Carter. Obviously, right here, Valdez Scantling, Mecole Hardman, Chase Claypool, Gabe Davis, Treylon Burks. Those are very young and very talented wideouts, one of which I could part ways with. Cole Kmet, Rodrigo Blankenship, and the big bad Buffalo Bills defense. Then my taxi squad, for those of you that don't know, a taxi squad, you could put players on this taxi squad and keep them on there for pretty much the as long as you want, essentially. I believe that works as, experience-wise, Trey McBride, he's 22 years old. You can only put players on the taxi squad that have less than 3 years of experience. So that's like your Dynasty IR, essentially, that you kind of just play around with and have fun with. You don't want anyone on those taxi squads to take up a roster spot, but you want them to be on your taxi squad so that you can go from there. But this is a very fun league. I looked at Bryce Vandermast's team today, and that's not how you look at the team. That's something that I'm learning with Slaper, but we can just go here. This is my first matchup. He's got TB12. He's got Baker Mayfield. He's got Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley, Mari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, Michael Thomas, George Kittle, Hunter Renfrow, Nick Folk, and Pittsburgh's defense. And then he's obviously got Deshaun Watson, who is as polarizing a player as any right now for obvious reasons. But looking at a Dynasty League, obviously Tom Brady's value is just this season. So once Tom Brady's gone, he'll have Mayfield and Watson. He'll be hoping that Mayfield steps it up a little bit, and he's hoping that Watson will actually come back and return to his previous form. Nadif Taylor's team. Joe Burrow, as I mentioned, Tua Tagovailoa, Christian McCaffrey, Williams, running back for for the Denver Broncos. Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown. How much will Nadif benefit from the A.J. Brown move from Tennessee to Philly? And then you have Deontay Johnson, Dawson Knox, young up-and-coming tight end, David Montgomery as well in the flex. And you look at Josh's team, he's got Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins, DeAndre Swift, Ken Walker III, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Jerry Jeudy, Dallas Goedert, Cortland Sutton, and Miami's defense. So some teams are deeper than others, of course. That's what makes this fun, and that's what makes this a very difficult league to participate in. The rosters are so deep that you have to consistently try to just make your team better each and every year, any chance and every chance you can. I'm super excited for this league, and I enjoyed recapping it for you. Hope you guys enjoyed it that are in the league. Thank you for tuning in, and good luck this season. I'm getting the title. I'm getting my championship. I should have got it last year. I'm getting it this year. Take care.